Hi everyone, and welcome to another ArchDaily interview. Today we are launching ODA's latest project, an urban proposal for the future of the streets of New York. And to walk us through the concept, we have with us Eran, founding principal and executive director of ODA. Hi Eran, nice to see you.
Hi Crystal, it's good to see you again. Always a pleasure to be with you.
So Eran has established one of the most prolific architecture firms in New York, and today we will discuss ODA's very special urban project involving new plans for the streets of New York. My name is Kirsa Harou. I'm an architect, urban designer, and a managing editor at ArchDaily, and I will be your host. So ODA has developed a project that transforms a New York City block from the outside in. Aligned with ODA's vision to improve our urban environment, the proposed concept will alter the pedestrian experience, introducing new zoning changes that would give landowners air rights in exchange for giving their inner courtyards back to the city to be transformed into public-private spaces.
I'm Eran Chen of ODA. I'd like to share a new concept for the Flower District in New York. This case study demonstrates how we can expand the public realm, embrace density, and ultimately improve the life in our neighborhoods.
While cities are expanding all over the world and super tall structures dominate our skyline, there's an increasing importance to reactivate our urban core and improving life at the street level. We looked at the historical Flower District, located in the crossroad of iconic city landmarks and public parks in the heart of Manhattan, where community and commerce once flourished. This neighborhood, once filled with hundreds of flowers vendors, have been struggling for the past few decades. As traffic and cars have come to overpower pedestrians, it has become very hard to maintain a sustainable social and economic urban fabric. While typical streets are not enough to sustain a new density, existing city blocks have hidden courtyards that are privately owned and are underutilized. We propose a new city regulation that will encourage developers to bestow interior courtyards and create new connections to the street in exchange for an increase of floor area and height. As a result, the privately owned area will open up to the public. Now imagine a typical block, where over time, these spaces are being created and passageways are connecting them to the street. The ground floor surrounding these newly formed courtyards can now be meticulously programmed, replacing urban decay with markets, small businesses, coffee shops, diversified housing, hospitality, urban farming, and public art, and will expand the public realm to create a true cultural experience. Web of environmental, social, and economical sustainability will take root over time and expand in the Flower District and beyond. We look forward to a New York that is more inviting to explore, with green nooks of secret experiences that expands the imagination and show the power of reinvention.
So Eran, your project is a prototype that highlights a new concept that can basically be implemented anywhere in the world. Why pick the Flower District in New York as your first case study?
First of all, the Flower District is very close to our office, and it feels like a neighboring, it's a neighborhood that is part of where our office is. So we're very familiar with it. I know almost every building in it, and I've seen it change through the years and transform through the years. The other thing is there's something romantic about the idea of a flower district, right? A place that used to be a place for flowers, the people engaged in buying flowers and have kind of died through the years and decayed. And we want to bring it back. I think there's something very symbolic and romantic about that idea.
Okay, so why launch the project now? Like, what are the exact factors that actually push this project forward?
Well, listen, the idea was percolating in my mind for a few years now. But there's definitely, in the post-COVID era, there's an urge to find long-term solutions that are sustainable for our communities, that allows us to kind of explore and expand the public realm. And it's really an overlapping of a few challenges, as I would say, that accumulates not only in a city like New York, but I feel everywhere, in every major city around the world. So, you know, the decay or the sort of the dilapidating development of street retail, the need for more democratic public space, the need for access to a new type of public space, the need for you know, affordability and more democratic cities. All of these are elements that are now highlighted through the I think the post-COVID era, where we were so urged to explore, you know, many other territories within our city. So it seems like this is the best time to come up with this and articulate this idea in a way that communicates clearly to everyone.
And if you want to talk about your main problematic, let's say, or the question that you are trying to answer on both, let's say, the New York scale and the global scale, how can we formulate this question?
I think what we see is, with increased densities in city, an imbalance of density and quality of public space. And when I say quality, it's not just the quantity of it. In New York City, there's an issue of quantity of public space because of the density of the city. But, you know, we work in cities around the world. In Europe, for example, there are cities like Rotterdam and other places where there is a lot of space, but it's not quality. It's not condensed or organized or orchestrated well enough for us to use. So there's an urgency to find solutions to expand that public space. There's also an urgency to make our city more equitable. You know, we've been increasingly, you know, pinpoint into neighborhoods that serves only a certain segment of the community, where the ground floor is either gated, or even if it's open, it's very restrictive because of the pricing and because of the type of activities that it offers. So this idea is really what we think is a new idea that opens up those gates into maybe a new type of urbanism.
So it's basically quality, like number one. Let's talk just quality. So right. If you want to talk about the core principles of the project, and if you want to list them and associate them to like the needs of our times, how would that look like?
Well, the first thing that happens in our city is the decline of the typical retail. But it's not just a business proposition where retail is suffering now because Amazon is shipping boxes. It's really you know, a change of culture. The idea of spending leisure time in a linear sidewalk, which is usually very narrow next to otherwise a traffic walkway, and you know, just casually going into a restaurant or a shopping clothing store or whatever is declining. We need more than that. We need places of gathering. We need places where you know, at the street level, we can have community facility, we can have educational facility, we can harvest our own vegetables, and we can have affordable retail, a place where, you know, people who have local and small businesses can flourish as well. And so this is an opportunity. The decline of retail is an opportunity because we have all of this landscape and real estate that we can use. The other thing is the lack of mixed-use neighborhoods in our cities. This is inherent in the past, I guess, decades. The way that urban design was dictated was by segregation of usage. You have residential neighborhoods, and then you have a business center, and then you have a commercial neighborhood. This doesn't work anymore. And we all enjoy a mixed-use neighborhoods when we can walk to work, or we can walk and we can play, work, and sort of live in the same walking distance area. So that's the second driver for this idea. And the third driver, as I said, is equality and the ability of all kinds of people from all walks of life to enjoy a city. I feel there's a decline in the, I would say, the attractiveness of cities, especially after COVID. People are saying, hey, what's so great about cities? You know, I live in a small apartments, the public realm is not for me. Why should I stay? And I think cities, I know that cities are the future. This is the most sustainable thing to do, is to condense more humans in cities and not spread around. And we need to start looking inward instead of looking outward in the way that we expand the human experience.
So it's definitely not a top approach that you're going for. If I want to a bit say it in one sentence, is it about reviving, let's say, the street level through mixed use functions?
Yes, it's about finding a formula by which the street can get a whole new kind of life, which is intensified and fed from the top. Okay. And it's sort of the chicken and the egg, right? Because we say, what creates life in our cities? What brings people to enjoy the public realm? And some people would say, well, if you bring the right program, then people would come. And I would say, if you bring the right program at the ground floor, the right programs would come at the top. So, you know, the formulation has changed slightly. And if we think of cities as a great experience of public realm, that would attract hotels to be in this area. That would attract residents because people like to live in an active neighborhood. That would attract offices. So instead of trying to force sort of public activity through architecture necessarily, through programming, I think we can look at things differently and say, if I have a great place to go to lunch, if I can hang out after work in a place that is inviting, that is democratic, if I can see art shows, 2 minutes from my office or where I live, if I can live, play, and work in an area that is attractive, that would attract the mixed use nature of our neighborhood. And then developers are going to come in and want to build more hotels and more residents and offices, etc.
And do you think in all of this, is there still a place for spontaneity?
Well, I think it's all about spontaneity, because if you look carefully at the video, it suggests that it's an organic growth. It's not one big mega plan. We're not suggesting a big developer coming in and change the entire area at once, but rather through a small change of zoning that would allow small developments. We plant the seed at one location, we open up the street, we create a small courtyard surrounded by some restaurants and galleries and, affordable retail. And then the other one would come and the other one. And eventually it's going to be a chain that grows with time, which definitely, I think, is more spontaneous than having sort of a master plan that dictates the way that it's going to grow.
So as you just said, you are working on the existing infrastructure, on the existing urban fabric, altering current, let's say, parameters, rather than actually proposing an idea that would shake the whole system or that would change everything. Right. So why do you think it's important to actually opt for these kind of approaches in our world now?
I think that us as architects and city planners always have this grand plan of changing the world or changing our cities. And we have this tendency to dismiss the past, or, we give up on the existing infrastructure and we say, we need to do something else. And that's partially why cities are growing outwards, because we feel like, okay, we have nothing to do with what was there before, and we create another ring and another ring and another ring. It's time for us to grow the city inwards. First of all, it's a more sustainable thing to do. We can't just demo. It's a pipe dream to think that we can just demo everything and build it new. And ODA, we take a very pragmatic perspective to urban development, one step at a time. Second, there is so much potential in the existing infrastructure, not only in New York, but in every city, right? There's so many unused gaps. There's so many unused territories that with the right attention could be so much improved. And third, there's so much beauty in layering. City needs to be layered. We want to build the future in the present on the basis of the past. So looking inward is something that is less attractive, I think, to many, because you can't just revolutionize the system. I think it's really the right thing to do.
So how did you get to this urban understanding in your career?
You know, it's an interesting question, Krista, because I never thought as an architect 10, 15 years ago that I would deal with big urban questions. I was designing one building at a time. But at ODA, we've developed what I call a fractile system of urbanism. And fractality is the nature of growth in different scale of the same element that repeats themselves. You can see it in nature, right? In the forest, the trees and the branches and the leaves. And so when we started designing, and maybe I can share the screen and show you some example. We started, tell me if you see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, but you see the wrong screen. How about now?
Yes, it works. So these are projects from ODA, right? Previous projects from ODA.
Yeah, these are just previous models that we've done for projects in ODA where we design buildings, and we called it the expansion, the breathing room of a building. To what degree it can kind of expand and contract to improve the human experience through light and air and terraces and viewpoints, and also to create sort of a sense of community within the building itself. So these ideas started very small. We started thinking about the apartment, then the building expansion. And in that sense, these ideas have grown into much bigger scale. I want to share a project here. It's called Innovation Queens. It's basically one of those really projects that started from scratch as opposed to being in a small scale, where we've actually proposed to take 5 city blocks and carve out 25% of the footprint that is private area into a public space. What you see here is number one is sort of a public park, and then we have a world market, an urban plaza, a pedestrian area, a gallery space. All of these are given back to the community as we increase the density and create a sequence of public spaces in different scales. But it all started with a very kind of small ideas, and I'm going to share this video.
You're finally giving shape to your dreams.
Well, I didn't want the sound necessarily, so let's turn it off. Okay. Where a building consists of like small generic cubes of life, which is, our rooms, and how they come together to create these voids within our buildings that can be shared by the community. And this idea of voids within a building expanded in our minds to voids within city blocks. So when we were commissioned to design larger projects, by the way, Denizen is one of them, it's 2 city blocks, we then started thinking about the idea of breathing room of the building in a much larger scale. In this case, we convinced the city to demap the central street and make it a public park, and then create a sequence of courtyards that are publicly accessible within the building itself, and in a way blur the line between communal and public. So that is already an urban idea that has grown, in our mind to how that idea can then be applicable in every urban block in New York, into the Flower District idea and beyond. What we
So
see in some of these images is the beauty of sort of the blurring line between what's public and what's private.
So basically, you consider having like public-private initiatives rather than just public on its own or private on its own. You consider that this leads to better, let's say, or more tangible solutions.
Absolutely, because we have to. What we found is that the public-private partnership is a sustainable solution over time, regardless of political agenda or a single project that is approved by city planning. The private sector wants to build more. And as a city refine the rules and regulations to create rules that the expansion also benefits the general public, we all benefit. So blurring those lines is the way of the future, creating zoning changes that incentivize the private sector to build better product that helps the city to grow. That's what I think we all need to look for.
It's very interesting to see that everything that now you are proposing is not very new to ODA, and that you've been actually trying, or like you've been actually working with these concepts way before in private, let's say, initiatives, or like for buildings or for residential, expanding everything into the urban realm. Do you still want to show us any other project?
Well, I just want to share something that relates to the idea of the movie in a very different way. Because we were asked, why we did this video, and because the video is, I don't know why it's jumping. 1 second, I'm sorry. The video is not a project. We're not commissioned to do it. It's a study that we've done, trying to dissect our idea and communicate it to the public, the general public, because it feels like you need to see something to understand and believe that it's possible. And by laying it out with a simple explanation of how the courtyards can be created within New York City, we communicate that idea. So we had a different idea for a tower in Seattle, which was in a way not necessarily a practical. We didn't have necessarily a client that commissioned us. We knew that a company is envisioning a tower in downtown Seattle. And we thought, what would happen if a simple generic tower could have a communal garden in the middle of it? And we created this study. And it's basically an idea that if you take the landscape, in this case, the views of Mount Rainier around Seattle, and you create a cut in the middle of the building, the footprint is large enough to accommodate a communal garden. And then we kind of arrange the communal spaces in that space. This would create something that doesn't exist before. And then we published it, I think also through ArchDaily.
Of course.
And after we did this, the client called us and we says, we love this thing so much and we got such good feedback. How about you guys design our tower? So the reason I'm saying this is, sometimes dream can shape reality, and it's important that we give them a forum to communicate in order to create the ability of people to know that it's possible.
So in order for the project to actually be adopted, the city needs to issue some regulations. So let's talk about the political dimension of the case study. Whenever we talk about stuff that are related to the urban realm, we have to talk about the politics behind it. So what is actually needed in order to mobilize, let's say, officials to approve these newly introduced principles that would involve the public and the private sector?
Yeah, I think that politics has a lot to do with urbanism, as we all know.
Unfortunately.
And, of course. And I think it's okay because, in a way, politics, is expression of the will of the people. At least we'd like to believe that. In some cases, it's not exactly correct, but we'd like to believe that. And the general, I think it's fair to say, the general demand of the people is for more equitable cities. It's not just affordable housing, it's affordable retail, it's more access to the assets of cities that could be shared by all. And the voice of communities becomes much more important. Many cities around the world are including in a much more kind of progressive way the community voice as part of decision making regarding urbanism. So what needs to happen is we need to find kind of right formulas that addresses the needs of the community's voice at one, the power of the private sector on the other hand, and instead of making them fight each other, making a peace between them and working together. What I've seen, or what we've seen happening in New York City, is because the voice of the communities is stronger, it slowed down or almost stopped a lot of the development of urban projects, because everything that was given was rejected, and for the right reasons in many cases. I believe that that's not necessary. We can give voice to communities for the things that serves them, that also is a win-win for the private sector and the developer and the city. We just have to be smart about how we build those formulations together. In a case like this, what we're hoping to do is that city planners in New York, as well as the mayor, would understand the power of an idea like this, that communities would understand the powers of an idea like this and the benefits of it, and that together with the architects, who are, I think, the facilitators of urban solution, we can move forward instead of moving backwards, and start building our city inwards in a way that benefits all.
And like, since we brought up the idea of community and of the public realm again, my question for you is, how does this project engage the local, let's say, society?
Well, first and foremost, it's basically dedicates the ground floor of our city to the needs of the community. Okay. And as part of the idea of the rezoning, the city can formulate, like we're formulating affordable housing within projects, can formulate an area within the ground floor that is affordable retail, and then we can segregate that portion. Let's say 20% of the retail at those plazas is going to be affordable retail. What it means is that every small business owner within the neighborhood could potentially afford to have a business at the street level. That would accelerate the economical growth of that community, and would also serve people in a more, equitable way. That I don't just have very expensive restaurants, I might have more affordable restaurants because they pay less rent. Also, it would dictate programs that are community facilities. For example, maker spaces or artist galleries or places where people can work, or urban farming. Urban farming is something that is growing now as a concept, and I've studied it very deeply. The idea of, for example, hydroponic planting. We need to have spaces in the city, in the ground floor, where people can not only grow their produce, but they can also buy them as a market. The problem is affordability. So we can have that. So by dictating affordability at the ground floor and a diverse of programs, we basically give back the ground floor to the communities. Now, the argument is that when we do that, we create such attractive and dynamic public spaces that it would benefit the floors above. People would want to live there, people would want to have a hotel there, people would want to create office and work there. So if we create community, portions of the upper floors as affordable housing, affordable office, affordable, and it's just a portion of it. That would, I think, propel dynamic, livable, more, equitable neighborhoods that would benefit all.
and would contribute to create actually more inclusive spaces in the city.
Yeah, it's so much needed. It's the quality of public spaces in the city we're all urging for. You know, we work very close to the Flower District, and if you work at ODA and you want to go down and have an affordable lunch, sit outside and enjoy sort of a beautiful communal kind of space, you can't find it in the Flower District. You have to go to the McDonald's on 8th Avenue. That's not quality of life. So, you know, to propel offices to stay within a Flower District and offices not to fail, we need to give the employees the ability to, you know, to have breakfast, to have lunch, to go out after work in a place that they can sit down and enjoy meeting their friends. And that doesn't exist right now.
So we've talked about what you wish to achieve through the Flower District project on a neighborhood level, but what do you wish to achieve through this project on a global scale?
You know, it's interesting because I've been working in Rotterdam in the past few years. We have a big project there, the Post, where we convert the old post office building and make it a mixed-use project. And what I've learned about the city of Rotterdam is that there's no lack of public space. The streets are very wide, the sidewalks are big, there's bike lanes, but there is a lack of quality public space. And when you drive around, you see that the streets are fairly empty. There's really not a lot to do in many segments of downtown Rotterdam. On the other hand, a city like New York or Tokyo or London has places where the density has immense so greatly that there's really not enough public space at all. What I'm hoping to achieve is a balance act, where through this idea of expansion of already existing infrastructure and creating qualities of public realm at the street level, we then can bring cities that has a problem of activation to a nice balance of density and public realm. And we can bring cities like New York, where there's over-densification and a lack of public realm, into a balanced equilibrium. So from our work around the world, and we work now at about 15 countries, what I found is that the problems are very similar, although the infrastructure is very different. We all want to have the same solution. We want to have a new balance of density and quality of public life. We want to have equality. We want to have affordability in our cities. And it doesn't matter if you come from one angle or another. I think the solution is somewhere in the middle.
So basically, cities can learn balance, let's say, from this project. But if they want to deduct, let's say, their own or deduce their own solutions, their own contextual solutions for more, let's say, local challenges, because of course we have like general and common needs, but every city has also contextual challenges, stuff that are different from others. So how can these cities learn from the Flower District project? How can they actually create their own, let's say, very specific solutions?
I would say there's a few basic rules that we need to adhere to, and clearly this is very broad, and every city is different, every context is different. Number one, mixed-use neighborhoods. We have to stop the segregation of building either residential or business or commercial, and change the zoning regulation to allow for mixed-use neighborhoods. Number two, every building built needs to have a significant contribution to the public realm. We cannot approve buildings that are taking area from our public realm without giving back. And it doesn't matter if it's through a small plaza or affordable retail or community facility. Every building must give something back. The third one is not be afraid of density. High density is something that a lot of communities are afraid of because they're concerned about issues of contamination, of noise, of parking. I don't believe density is the problem. I believe that with the right mix of high density and quality public realm, you can have better solutions. So when city conceive higher densities, unfortunately, many times today, it's only about the height and the number of the floor area, right? Zoning usually tells you can build a tower this high or that high. I didn't see many cities that has zoning regulations that combines the density regulation with the ground floor regulation. They have to come together. And if we start looking at higher density with regulations of the public realm together, both in program and in area, I think we can find very innovative solutions to improve our existing infrastructure without revolutionizing or demolition of all of our cities, which of course is a pipe dream.
I love this idea of like not thinking about about a building as a single element on its own, you know. And do you think more architects should be urban designers, or they should start having more urban understanding?
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that, because in our office, we always feel that our profession have segregated topics through the years that should never be segregated. We say that there are architects and there are urban designers, and then there's landscape designers, and then there's interior designers. These elements must come together, and in the future, I believe that architects cannot design buildings in urban context without a deeper understanding of urbanism. Because every single building is not only a contributor to the overall public realm, but is responsible for it. We can't just sit there and design buildings and create forms that stands alone. Our city is now sort of a condensed unity of buildings, and the public realm is basically the gap that they all create together. Every object is a contributor.
It's a give and take a relationship rather than just a standalone thing. Eran, so we are reaching the end of this very beautiful conversation. Would you like to add anything else?
Well, I just want to hope that a lot of people that are not architects or not urban designers, understand nothing about city planning or design of buildings, would take away from this video the simplicity or the simple message. Our cities could become so much better for all of us. And we don't have to revolutionize anything. We just have to push for a smarter planning. And we have to push our local officials, our mayors, our city planners to respond to our needs in a way that really accommodates the quality of architecture. And that dynamic between the public and us, the professionals and the politicians, this dynamic should not be a resentment. This should be a collaboration. I hope that message is somewhat being translated through this video.
Thank you, Eran, so much for this conversation and for walking us through the concept.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, and see you soon.
See you soon.